So welcome everyone for joining us today. My name is Rachel Oxner and I am the Marketing and Communications Officer here at Perennia. I'm going to be moderating today's session, Non-Conformances, What Are Your Struggles? Ask Us Anything. Today I'm joined by Shelly MacDonald and Elaine Grant for this unique webinar AMA session. In a few moments, I will turn it over to them to introduce themselves. But before we do that, I'm just going to quickly go through some basic housekeeping items. So today's webinar is funded through our Food Ventures program, which is made possible through the Sustainable Canadian Agriculture Partnership. All of our participants today will have their audio and video turned off during the webinar, so no access to those. For those of you who had submitted questions in advance, we really appreciate that. If you would like to ask a question during the session, you can use the Q&A feature and the chat features at the bottom of your screen. We'll be monitoring that throughout the session, so please feel free to ask your questions anytime, and we will answer them as we go along. Right. Okay. So now we've kind of gone through some of those basic housekeeping items, I will turn it over to Shelly and Elaine to introduce themselves, and then we will get started.
Thanks, Rachel. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Shelly MacDonald, and I'm one of the co-managers of the Quality and Food Safety Department here at Perennia.
I'm Elaine Grant. I'm a co-manager also of the Quality and Food Safety Department here at Perennia.
Excellent, thanks, ladies. Similar introductions, but two unique people who have different experiences. So it's great to have you both here for the webinar today. Do you want to kind of just jump in with a bit of a definition on non-conformances so we can kind of get everybody up to speed on what that is for those joining us?
Absolutely. So a non-conformance, the definition is when an established requirement is not met. So let's just talk about minor, major versus critical before we get started answering your questions that you submitted. A minor non-conformance is when an established requirement is not met and is not likely to significantly impact product quality, safety, or compliance. Whereas a major nonconformance is when an established requirement is likely to significantly impact product quality, safety, or compliance. And last but not least, a critical nonconformance. So this is when an established requirement is not met and has a direct impact on product quality, safety, or compliance. So to put it in perspective, I'll just give you a quick example of each. A minor nonconformance would be like when you're reviewing documentation and you come across a document that was not signed off. So that's one of many documents. That would be a minor. Whereas a major nonconformance would be if you were reviewing that same documentation and there was multiple records that weren't signed off. And then the most severe, of course, is that critical nonconformance. And an example of that would be if you fail to meet a critical limit, or let's say you produced a product that contained allergens and the final label did not include the allergen on the label. Thanks, Rachel.
Thanks, excellent, that's great. It's great to just kind of get everybody on the same page before we jump into the questions. But let's get started. So our first question today is, what has been the most serious non-conformance you have seen throughout your career?
Wow. All right. We're starting with a big one right from the get-go. So Elaine, what have you seen?
Well, it's the most sad, but slightly I can laugh about it now, is the owner's pet running in through the plant and jumping on the auditor at the very start of an audit as we were doing the facility tour. That didn't end well. That was an auto fail. So, you know, things happen during audit day, and that's probably one of the worst ones that I could have seen happen.
That's a rough one. For me, this is one that will stick with me forever, I think. An operator decided to bring Pam into the establishment. Pam, of course, the cooking Pam, is soy-based, and we did not have soy as an allergen in the facility. And they had decided to use this Pam as a release agent so that the product wasn't sticking to the trays. And of course, it was during an SQF audit when the auditor asked to look in the cupboards above, and lo and behold, they found a case of 6 Pam, and we had no idea that Pam was brought in by the operator. That was a bad one.
Those definitely seem like some bad ones that you both have seen, and those bad ones kind of stick with you, like you said.
Yeah.
Yeah. do you want to both speak to kind of what the most common, pardon me, non-conformance that you've seen throughout your career, or kind of the ones that you're seeing more consistently?
Yeah, pest control is one that keeps coming up, and it's kind of a sad one to get if you contract out. So it's really important that communication is really key when you're talking to your pest control provider. Like, print that standard off of the regulation. They may not know, it may not come, maybe not common knowledge. Maybe they're used to doing restaurants or something, totally different standard there. So it's really important to communicate that and make sure that your pest control is meeting all requirements. I mean, you are ultimately responsible for that, so.
Yeah. So at the end of the day, it is your responsibility as the operator of the establishment, even though you are paying these pest control providers really good money and you expect a certain service. At the end of the day, you need to ensure that they are doing their job and you verify they are doing the job correctly.
Okay, great. Thank you. So we'll get to the next question here. That's all right. We'll do, so the next question I have is, this person writes in and says that their main concerns are really around how to properly respond to non-conformance for NSF audits. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Absolutely. So when you are preparing to do a corrective action plan, whether it is for a third-party certification or it's internal, there's always going to be certain steps you have to follow. And you're going to have the clause or the requirement of what the non-conformance was against. And then, of course, there's always going to be that objective evidence. So what proof do you have that you didn't meet that requirement or that clause? And then you're going to need to know who's going to be responsible for correcting that. And then, of course, you have the corrective action, which is the immediate correction that you're going to do. And after you look at that correction, now it's time to get to the root cause. So one of the things that we see people, confused about is the NSF database or the third-party certification databases. The order of how to put this information in is a little bit different than what they have on their own corrective action plans. But at the end of the day, it's all the same information. So you have your corrective action, you have your root cause analysis, you have your preventive measures, and then, of course, you are going to verify those preventive measures as well to ensure that the preventive measures you have put in place is going to be effective in the long run.
Yeah. So we actually have, if you kind of not sure on what to do with responding to a non-compliance, we have these handy dandy booklets that are available. Go through nice point form detail on what you should be doing on a basic non-conformance, and it's also available on the website as well, and we'll send those links out after we're done.
Excellent. That's great. Awesome. Okay, so jumping into our next question. This person is asking best practices for training and incentivizing workers to harvest at optimum ripeness. So I'm not sure if that's fully related to non-conformance, but maybe you can kind of speak to it a little bit from your experience.
Yeah, so it isn't really, it could be a non-conformance if you don't do it right. So that kind of goes back to some of the common non-conformances we do see, and in training is one of them. And if you don't properly train your workers or have that training documented, you're definitely going to have an issue. I do recommend doing training frequently. So it stays top of mind. Do little toolbox talks. It doesn't have to be fancy. We do have some resources on our website for that as well. And these little records that you can use to keep. I'll send links out to this as well, because I think it would help everybody. But if you have a little point form sheet, you can go through with your workers on whatever topic you want to do it on, and then do a little fancy recording at the end. I think you would definitely, if you show them, if you teach them, then show them and get them to repeat that practice. That's kind of good adult learning type techniques to use if you're seeing issues. And the communication is really key to that. So, and the documentation, and that's a common non-conformance we do see is the training.
And keep in mind, training is not one size fits all. So there's going to be different generations at your facility. There's going to be, different learning styles. Some people can read, some may not be able to read. There's different languages. So you're going to know those employees best. and then determine which training style is best for them. And like Elaine mentioned, training is another one of those top non-conformances we see. And typically it's because of the new hires and they didn't have time to train the new hire and get that record on the file. And then of course the auditor or the inspector comes in, and lo and behold, they ask for Johnny, and Johnny's a new employee and there's no records for Johnny.
But that's where those toolbox talks in, like a lot of people that follow the 5S or Kaizen techniques do these little toolbox talks at the start and just brief everybody on what's going on, any kind of issues, even shift changeovers. It's really important if you do multiple shifts. It's just taking that time. You only have to take 5 or 10 minutes. You can go over your safety stuff at that time, which is really important. And, you know, everybody sets off their shift on the right foot. That 5 and 10 minutes will save you so much headache if you can spend that kind of time. Yeah.
Just make sure you have the record.
Make sure you have the record. Yeah.
Excellent. That's great. That was very helpful. Thank you so much. We actually had a question come in from one of our attendees today. So I think I'll give that one to you ladies if you're ready for one of those. So this person's asking, you know, we're struggling with finding the root cause for non-conformances that are human errors. So for example, a supervisor doesn't complete his GMP record on Friday for no other reason than he forgot because he was rushing to leave for the weekend. Do you need me to repeat the question? Are you okay with, you got it kind of? You're good?
Oh, we're good.
Okay, great.
That's a common one. You definitely have to get to the root cause in that. Why wasn't there enough time? Like you really have to take a giant step back and maybe work as a team on that and don't try and solve that on your own. Are they wearing too many hats? Is there something going on in the background? Like, you know, everybody forgets something. Maybe there's a special reminder you're going to have to put in place, I guess, for them to fill out their paperwork, you know, if there's a note on the door when they go out or something. I mean, if it continually happens, you're definitely going to have a sit down, but help if it's a personality thing or a person issue specific, you can't cure that with training because no training is going to solve that, right? You need to get them be part of the solution, I guess, right? Because it is an issue and you're going to get a non-conformance for it or a non-compliance or whatever from your regulatory person, right? So, yeah.
Yeah, so sometimes it can be as simple as an Outlook reminder to that particular person. If it's an ongoing issue, then as Elaine mentioned, maybe that person's wearing too many hats, or maybe they're not the right person to be filling out that information. So getting to the root cause is really asking the questions more than once, and it's doing a really thorough investigation. And it's not you sitting behind a desk asking yourself the question, it's getting everybody involved. You going to that person and asking that person, why were you in a rush? Why did you not fill out that record?
But don't do the blame game. Like make that, like we need to fix this because this is the reason why, because maybe they don't realize it. Or maybe they're asked to do too many, maybe they're repeating paperwork and it doesn't make sense. Like, you know, look at that too as well. I mean, there could be other things in place. And if you go in like wanting to work with them, you'll probably fix the issue.
Awesome. That's great. Excellent. Thank you so much for that question. Appreciate that. And the answer is excellent. We'll jump back over to some of the ones that we have pre-submitted. So this person asks, I'm trying to close a corrective action I received from an audit, and I just can't seem to get it accepted. What am I missing?
Okay. So a lot of the times it could be because you did not fill out all the sections of that corrective action plan. So really go through whether it's the database that you're filling the information in, or it's your own internal form that you're filling the information in, and take a look. Did you put the description in there? Did you put the information for the immediate, that corrective action? Did you do a thorough investigation and get to the root cause of it? Do you have a preventive action? Do you have the person responsible for each of those? Do you have a realistic timeline in place? Did you provide the evidence as well? So that's another thing is people will fill out that corrective action plan, but then they'll fail to include that evidence, whether that's a picture of a missing door seal before and then a picture of the fixed door seal to show that there's no gaps. Maybe it's a revised documentation that you need to do. So those are some of the reasons why your corrective action plans might not be getting closed out.
Yeah, it's 9 times out of 10 is your root cause isn't quite enough. Or if it's always training, like you can't train enough, but you can't retrain multiple times to fix the problem if that's not really the actual root cause of it, right? So it's not understanding what they're asking for and not supplying that proof. That's kind of huge. Yeah.
Yeah. And we see that over and over is everyone's preventative measure is retraining. If you're seeing a trend, clearly retraining is not the preventative measure. So you didn't get to the root cause of the problem.
Excellent. Thank you. That's great. So let's do another one here. So the technical reviewer did not accept my corrective action plan. What do I do? Should I contact them?
No.
No.
Go back to square one. Yeah, don't do that. They can't help you. They can't consult. So you really, it goes back to the same thing of did you really find the root cause? Did you really document it all correctly? I know that a lot of the submission databases, they don't put things in order, which I find a lot of people find confusing because you have your clause, you didn't meet your requirement, and they ask for evidence that's from the auditor and then who's responsible, but then they launch right into root cause. But really you need to put that immediate corrective action, what you did first to control the issue, and then go do your root cause, right? And then do your preventative measures or your preventative action, but that's your permanent corrective action is what people don't understand the difference between the correct, or they copy and paste the corrective action, the preventative action, and that's not the same thing. So, and they don't understand preventative is permanent. So if you can say that in your head, okay, preventative is permanent, corrective action means I fix it right away, I hang that broom up right away, but really
It's temporary.
it's temporary, right? Like it's not going to fix it 100%. You're going to keep having the problem because people aren't going to hang the brooms up. You got to find the actual root cause and the actual finalization and fix it for good kind of thing. Yeah.
So one of the things that I would do right away too is really review the technical reviewer's remarks. There's going to be a comment section and they're going to give you some information. So what information is there? Did they say that you failed to include the evidence? Did they say that, you didn't get to the root cause? What is in those reviewer comments? And then once you take a step back and you look and you say, okay, well, you know what? I've put all the information in. I'm not quite sure. If, take another stab at it. And if it's still not accepted and you've tried, maybe there is some kind of miscommunication and you might have to reach out just for clarification. Again, as Elaine said, technical reviewers, auditors, inspectors, their job is not to give you guidance. They're not consultants. They're there to do their own job to make sure that that information is correct. So, but you can ask for clarification. That's okay.
Great. Okay. Thank you. So we had another question coming in, so I will throw this over to you both and see if you can answer. It's kind of coming in multiple parts, which is great because we're getting more information. So I appreciate that.
More is good.
Yeah, absolutely. We appreciate that. This participant today is asking, so as a supplier of sanitation, chemistry, and training, we're still encountering some resistance to adopt industry cleaning and sanitation standards. So they're saying, have you or are you seeing changes in the industry regarding the acceptance of sanitation standards? And when you encounter resistance, what are the most common causes?
Culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
This goes back to culture, and it goes back to, we did it this way for 25 years or 50 years, or my dad and my grandfather. So why do we have to change? And it's an education piece. It's really sitting down. And if you are, that sanitation provider, that chemical provider, it's sitting down and educating the industry on why we do things this way today. And give some examples of what happened in the past, why we moved this way, why we didn't continue to do things the old way. A lot of the times, it does come back to money, and chemicals are expensive. Cleaning tools are expensive. But at the end of the day, it's all about starting off with a clean surface. So do you want to have a recall situation? That's going to be a lot more money than shelling out some money for some chemical products or utensils.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, okay, excellent, that's great. Okay, so we'll go back to our other list. And so the next question I have is, can I allow a consultant to log into the certification body NC database and submit corrective actions on my behalf?
No, you shouldn't do that.
That's
You
what I was
really
thinking.
shouldn't. In a past life, I have. I don't think it teaches anybody anything. You don't take that ownership. I know by the end of the audit, everybody wants to go lay down because it's a lot. But you need to kind of just get in there and, I mean, if you don't understand how to log into it, a consultant can show you, walk you through that. But if they're doing it for you, you're never gonna, it's like the teaching people to fish thing, right? You need to learn this so you can feed yourself. You need to be able to maintain this program. So going forward is a stronger program. You know how to, move with the punches. And when they change the database, you won't be starting off square one again. Like you really, yeah.
Yeah. So as Elaine mentioned, it's one thing to use it as an education tool for the consultant to sit down and walk you through the first time if you're new to it. As far as giving the consultant your username and your password to log in, that's your responsibility to ensure you know how to put corrective actions in place and fill this stuff out. And the more times you do it, the more practice you have, the more familiar you are with doing corrective action plans, the more successful you're going to be in the long run. Your consultant's not always going to be there. What if they go on vacation?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That makes a lot of sense. I like the teach them to fish reference,
Couldn't remember the rest of it.
Yeah, that's right. So I think it's.
I'm hoping Shelly would jump in. Yeah.
Yeah, it's good. All right. So the next question is, what happens if your non-conformance is not accepted by the due date on your audit report or inspection report, or it is not completed by the state?
Okay, so you do risk not getting your certificate. This is why we cannot stress enough that it is very important that at the end of your audit or your inspection, as soon as you receive that report and you have those identified non-conformances in front of you, that you start working on them. Keep this in mind, folks. Your audit is not over until you have that certificate in your hand. A lot of people, the audit's over, phew, it's time to relax or it's time to have a drink. But really, it's not time to relax until you have the certificate. So the sooner you can start working on those non-conformances, the better it is going to be for you, because you do risk not getting your certificate.
Well, here's the other thing. If you don't start right away, what if you need an extension? You don't know until you do the full root cause. Maybe you need to put a whole new wall in or something. Well, that's not going to happen overnight. You have to ask for that extension early. You don't want to, because it takes time, right? They, they only review what those extensions, like what, how often do they meet? Once a week
so
or something
like the
that?
appeal
So,
committee, the extension committee, that's normally a weekly meeting. It's not something they do daily. And let's say you have 28 calendar days. That's calendar days.
that's weekends too, right?
That's right. That's weekends too.
Okay. Yeah, that's important. Okay. So, and you mentioned the appeal. So when is it appropriate to appeal a non-conformance? When would that be an appropriate action to take?
So if you have reason to believe that, you can appeal, or that the requirement that's being asked of you, like that particular clause, you don't have to meet that and you have a strong risk assessment, then that's time, that you can go in and apply for an appeal. Now, keep in mind, you must do these appeals respectively. And again, you need to ask for an appeal as soon as possible. The appeal committee usually meets only weekly, not daily. And that clock starts ticking when that auditor leaves your facility.
Yeah. And just really take the emotion out of the appeal. I know people get really cranky about them and upset, and you just need to take a just lay out all your evidence and say, okay, this isn't right. This is the way it should be. This is our requirement. This is what we have. And just be prepared too, because when they come back a week later, okay, you've lost 7 days there to look at your put your your corrective actions in. So be prepared that you might have to meet it anyways. You may not successfully get an appeal. So
And this is why it's so important for you guys to know your industry and know your program, because that inspector is going to have a scope and knowledge of your industry and of the products. But you guys are experts in that field. So if you know something is being asked of you or you were given a non-conformance and it doesn't make sense, then respectively appeal that.
well, here's the other thing, Shelly, I just thought of it. So if you're in an audit and you're getting a non-conformance for this particular thing and it doesn't make sense for you, just, be respectful and just ask, well, can you show me that and where that is in the standard? And 9 times out of 10, you get the auditor to go, oh, okay. Or talk through it, or maybe you'll better understand where their position is from. And you may not even have to appeal, may not even come to play, because they may realize, because a lot of these auditors do jump in and out of standards, in and out of different facilities, sometime in the same week. So, and they are human beings, right? So, they can make a mistake. And the good ones will admit to that, right? And say, okay, you know what, you're right. That isn't in the standard. I'm auditing to the audit guidance. That used to happen
That's right.
a fair bit. Just when they used to have the 2 guidances out in place, publicized for a lot of the standards. So that's just something to think about too, right? Like you can totally ask, like, can you show that to me in the standard? Because I'm not quite following where you're coming from on this. And that's like 100% okay to do.
Yeah, so that's a good point, Elaine. Sometimes it's a guidance document that maybe that auditor was going by or that inspector. But inspectors, they audit to regulations, and the auditors must stick to what's in the standard. So those clauses and those requirements, not to guidelines. Good point.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, so this next question we have is, we are seeing a trend with the same non-conformance. What am I missing?
The root cause.
I was gonna say something. Root cause analysis.
Yeah.
Or the preventative measures you put in place aren't quite right. I mean, you might have got to the root cause, but then took the easy route on your preventative measures, maybe. Do you think? Yeah, it's something in that whole process, that root cause analysis process, you went the wrong direction.
Yeah, I'm sure a lot of you have heard this one over and over again. It's, the dandelion. If you pluck the head of the dandelion's going to come back. If you mow over it, it's going to come back. But if you take the dandelion diggers, or, you get your hand down there and you grab the root of the dandelion, then it's not going to come back. I like to pick on my husband. So I'm going to give you an example of something that happened in real life at my house. So we've lived in this house since 2008. Never once did I ever notice a water stain or mold or anything on the ceiling. One day I walk into my son's room and I notice in the right-hand corner, there was a little water stain and some mold growth. And I said to my husband, come on in here, something's going on. And he looked at me and he said, I can fix that. Where's the bleach at? And I looked at him and I said, that's not going to fix it. And he said, oh, it sure will. So he goes out and he sprays bleach on it. And sure enough, the ceiling's white again. And, with a husband or a wife, you need to learn to pick your battles. So I thought, okay, I'm just going to wait until it comes back. And then he's going to see that I was right. So sure enough, after another storm, it came back. And I call him in the room and I'm like, hey, take a look up there. What's going on? Oh, just go give me that bleach again. I said, no. You're putting a Band-Aid on the problem here. You need to get up in that attic and you need to take a peek to see what's going on. That is doing a thorough investigation, and that's getting to the root cause. So sure enough, he climbs up in that attic and he realizes that the windstorm had blown all the insulation back. So he goes in and he puts in some new insulation. But what really happened, what was the cause of all of this, is we replaced our roof. So when the new roofer came in, I don't know what the proper terminology is, but they put breathable parts at the top of the roof as opposed to just the sides of your house. So now it was breathing too much and too much wind was getting in. So we actually ended up in the end having to close off the sides on each of the house. So spraying that Javix on the ceiling, that was just putting a Band-Aid on a Band-Aid on a Band-Aid.
Yeah, okay, great example. And I really like that one. That's really good. Okay. So next question is, the inspector or auditor just left the facility and non-conformances were identified. What do I do? Or what should I do now?
Start doing your root causes. Really start looking at them, like pull your whole team together and do a debriefing. So you're not by yourself doing this. That happens a lot with the quality people. They get left to solve the problems and really, they may not have all the tools to do that. They can definitely facilitate, going through this root cause analysis part because they should have the training. But pull your whole team in and really take a look. That team could be the same one you use for recall or whatever, right? So pull everybody in and take a look and see what you can start smashing them out, basically, and don't wait.
Yeah. So another important thing is bringing senior management in and your team and talking about the results. Did everything comply? Were non-conformances identified? Which ones were not? Which non-conformances were identified? What resources do we need? Is it going to be financial resources? Is it going to be staff that we need? And it is not the QA's department, as Elaine mentioned. That's the old mindset is QA will take care of this. No. Everyone at your facility plays a role in food safety. It is teamwork, right from logistics to production, sanitation, you name it. Everybody there plays a role. Bring them in. You are not in this alone. You should not have to feel like you are in this alone. And get started. That's the number one thing is don't wait, get started, talk about it. And if you're not sure where to go, use a phone a friend, call a colleague, pick up a phone and call a consultant if you need to.
Yeah.
Never feel like you're in it on your own.
Yeah. Quality is not a department. It's a company-wide commitment. And you have to if you need to print that out on a piece of paper and stick it on your wall, then do that because you're not alone in this. So.
Yeah. Okay, good. Next question. So this person's saying, I have questions on how to handle a non-conformance. Should I contact the auditor or inspector?
No. Again, they can't. I think we sort of answered that a bit with the technical advisor. The time for clarification is during the audit. Even then, they can't give you guidance, but they can definitely, if you don't understand it, they can reword it or, kind of explain that a bit better, where they're coming from, where the thought process is, or just to show you the evidence if you weren't quite clear on that. But no, you shouldn't be reaching out to your auditor after that because they can't help you solve these problems. So.
Yeah. Your auditor is there to collect the objective evidence to determine whether or not everything meets the requirements or there are non-conformances to be issued. And that's the same for your inspector. They're there to check the box. Does it meet or does it not meet? And at the end of the day, it's your responsibility to put that corrective action plan in place. Your auditor and your inspectors are not consultants. They do not give guidance. That's not their role.
Good to know. Next question. So this person is saying they're completing their monthly inspection report and they just came across a deviation. Am I required to initiate a corrective action plan?
Oh, this is a great question.
Yeah.
We get this question a lot, only because a lot of the times people aren't sure when they can do a simple correction versus, completing that formal non-compliance corrective action plan. So think of it this way. Let's say it's your monthly inspection, you're walking through and you notice a broom is not in the janitorial closet where it's supposed to be. It's a one-off. Hopefully your monthly inspection report is set up with a section where you can write comments. And if that's the case, you simply write broom not stored in the janitorial closet, remove the broom from such and such an area and put it in the janitorial closet. The next step you're going to do is you're going to go and you're going to speak to the person who may have left the broom in that spot. Now, if you come back the next month and you see that broom is there again, so there's a trend, then this is a systemic problem and you have to do a formal corrective action plan. Or anytime you see trends, it's a corrective action plan. Also, if it directly relates to food safety, it's an automatic corrective action plan. You're filling out that documentation with the immediate correction, doing your thorough investigation, your root cause analysis, your preventative measures, your verification of your preventative measures. So, you know, if it's a one-off, you put that there, but you still have to document what you saw and what you did to fix the problem.
Everybody should, after this, should go back and look at their records and make sure they have a spot for notes or to put immediate corrective action on them. Because that is something that will save you from this corrective action writing exercise. Like that's kind of a new update. If you've been in the industry for quite a while, you're used to writing a deviation every time. But then it becomes a deviation writing exercise and you never close them. So really there's no point. So you really need to go back and update your records with a spot to put those immediate corrective actions. And really take a look when you go back to verify that, is this a trend? Am I seeing a trend? Do I need to do a full corrective action on this? Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of people we see will, everything they identify, a broom's not in the
Yeah.
right spot, or there's, you know, a piece of dirt here.
Yeah.
Right away, they're gonna go and write a corrective action. And it's like Elaine said, it's a writing exercise. If it's something that you can simply correct, but write that down and keep a record of it, then that's all you have to do. You correct it right then and there.
Yeah.
As soon as it becomes frequent, there's a problem.
So this next one is, you know, if our internal audit form has a section for corrective action, are they required to complete a corrective action plan form?
Depends on what you have on your corrective action plan. If you have all the spots for, you know, what clause wasn't met and
On your internal audit.
on your internal audit, yeah. If you have a space at the bottom or to the side, depends on how big your internal audit or your HACCP plan reassessment or whatever. Make sure that you have a spot on it that includes the root cause, that, you know, you got immediate corrective action, preventative action plan. If it doesn't have all those components, then yeah, you do need to, you know, write a corrective action for that. So it's better just to combine that all in one form if you can do it. Save you a bit of time.
Yeah, so that's exactly it. It's going to depend on the record itself. And it is great to have that on your internal audit. If you can, you know, save time instead of regurgitating all that information from the internal audit form and putting it on a corrective action plan form. But like Elaine mentioned, you have to have all those sections on that internal audit form. If you don't, you need to put that information somewhere. It needs to be captured. So it is in your best interest, instead of taking the internal audit form and then going to corrective action plans, if you have all of that there and you can just simply plug in what, you know, what's the objective evidence? What clause did I not meet? What did I do? What was my immediate correction? What was the root cause? What's my preventative measure? Sign off on there, have timelines and all of those things, and you should be fine.
So our next question today is, what is the difference between a correction or an immediate corrective action and a preventative measure?
So your immediate corrective action is what you're physically going to do right away to solve the problem. So if you have a cooler that's dripping condensate into a product, you're going to immediately hold that product. You're going to mark it somehow. You're going to contain the liquid and everything else and call somebody in. But then you're going to do your root cause and then go back and see, why wasn't this noticed before? Maybe preventative, maybe it turns out with your root cause that you're not doing your PM or your preventative maintenance isn't being done at a proper frequency, or somebody forgot to clean the drain, or maybe there was a misunderstanding between your tech that you bring in for the cooler, that they didn't clean, they serviced the equipment, but they didn't clean the drain, but you thought they were going to. So that preventative measure is when you go through after your root cause analysis and you put your preventative measure in to permanently solve the problem.
Yeah, so if we go back to my husband and the mold and water stain, spraying Javix, that's an immediate correction. He fixed it in the sense that you couldn't see it anymore. So
Yeah.
he applied a Band-Aid, but the preventative measure was preventing recurrence. So it was going up, replacing the insulation and capping off those areas that needed to be capped off.
Yeah, that's the permanent.
But after you put these preventive measures in place, it's really important to do the verification to ensure that it is effective.
Your effectiveness checks. You got to go back and there's no real timeline for that. Like it could be a week, it could be a month, it could be 60 days from now. Because if you don't get rain well, this summer we had a lot of rain, but if you don't get rain all summer to check, you can't tell if the roof's leaking unless you go up there with a hose. You know.
Yeah.
So yeah, we can use a leaking roof as an example. Your immediate corrective action, you're going to put buckets up there and you're going to dump the buckets. Your long-term, your preventative action is you're going to contact a contractor. The contractor is going to come in and they're going to repair that roof. And then that verification, that effectiveness check, like Elaine said, you can't do it on the next sunny day. You're going to have to wait for the next rainstorm. That could be a month, it could be 3 months, but it has to be realistic, the time that you allow. The verification check or the effectiveness check should never be the same day or the next day. You have to give it some time to see if it's actually working.
And if you do not have a spot on your current corrective action form for an effectiveness check to really close out that non-conformance, you need to add that on there.
Okay. That's excellent. Thank you. So this question is saying the standard that they follow states that they have 28 days to complete the corrective action, but the auditor has only given them 2 weeks. Why would that be? Or what would be the reasoning behind that?
So typically this is because of a track record or history with the company, meaning that this company might always push it right until the last minute to submit their corrective actions. And for those of you who have submitted corrective actions, there's a good chance that they're not accepted every single time on the first try, and it's going to take multiple tries. So if you're submitting your corrective action at the last minute all the time, your auditor is going to know that, and they can be requesting that you do it within 20 days or 2 weeks instead of the 28 days.
Okay.
But one thing to keep in mind is if the standard says you have 28 days, you have 28 days.
Okay. Okay. Good. That's good to know.
Never leave it
Don't leave it last.
to the last minute.
Okay, so we've got about 15 minutes left for our webinar today. We've got a few more questions that we had submitted in advance. So I'll just kind of give a shout out to the audience too. If anyone has any questions that you want to kind of get in the last 15 minutes, like please feel free to submit those below and we'll take a crack at them. But I'll go back to our pre-planned one. So the next one I have here is this person is saying, or kind of asking, is it better to document a lot of non-conformances or only to document a few or none? They obviously are, wanting to look good in the whole experience. Can you speak to that a bit?
Yeah, don't do that.
Okay.
Yeah, just document the ones that are happening. And if an auditor comes into a place and everything is perfect, we've all been there. They have a ton of experience. You're just not documenting them, and don't make up them, because what's going to happen is it's almost like, I don't want to say making up a lie because that's kind of nasty, but yeah, it's making up a lie and eventually it's going to kick you. So they'll say, oh, you have a non-conformance, let me look at your root cause. And then if you make that up, it's not going to jive, and then you're going to dig yourself a hole. So yeah, don't make them up, capture them all in real time, admit everything. It's not the issue that happens that people are going to judge you on, it's how you handle it. You really, you need to handle it correctly. Things happen.
Mm-hmm.
At the end of the day, there's no magic number for deviations or non-conformances. It's what you see. You're collecting the objective evidence. You know your written program. You know what your established requirements are. Are you meeting them? Are you not meeting them? If you're not meeting them, it's time to record a non-conformance and complete those corrective action plans.
Okay, so this person is asking or saying that during an audit, they noticed a non-conformance while walking through the facility with the auditor. How are they supposed to handle this?
Address it right away.
Okay.
Just because you think your auditor didn't see it, they saw it. It's like walking through somewhere with your mom. They see everything. So they likely saw it. They're just seeing how you're going to handle it. And the same thing, if an auditor points something out to you that's a non-conformance, it's how you address it. Just don't say okay and be scared to move. Like it should be common practice. And that's the advantage of dealing with these corrective, issues when they come up, is that you've already had the practice before the audit, because it's Murphy's Law, right? Something is going to happen during an audit, and sometimes it's just not good things, or sometimes just something small or whatever. But if you address it right away and start your process, even though you're trying to coordinate and handle an auditor at the same time, it's how you handle that might make a difference between a major and a minor. That being marked as a major or minor critical non-conformance. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, this goes back to culture. It doesn't matter when you see the non-conformance, you address it each and every time. Doesn't matter if nobody's around, you still address it the same way that you would if an auditor is there, or if you're the only one there seeing it.
Okay, that's great. So our last question that we had kind of submitted in advance was, how can I get buy-in from my senior management so that the internally identified non-conformance needs to be addressed?
Hit them in the numbers.
This is a great question.
Yeah. Just put some dollar bills on it. And add that to your non-conformance. I mean, I've seen the people do that for recalls as well. The cost of their time, the cost of not dealing with a roof leak and then it expands, or have to do mold mitigation or whatever from it. Put dollar bills, even a guesstimate, throw it out there. You don't have to put too much detail into it. But if you show them the difference of fix it now, fix it later, or if they don't fix it now and they wait for an audit, it could mean, critical and they don't get a certificate, or it could mean that they, instead of having 6 months to fix an issue, they only have like 2 weeks to 28 days. So, sometimes and have to ask for an extension, then they just never get their certificate, right? It takes forever. Yeah, just, I think hit it with the dollar bills is where you're gonna see the improvement there.
Yeah, for sure.
And document it and keep all your emails and, make sure you have all that with you just in case it does fall back on you. Yeah.
And again, this goes back to the education piece as well. Senior management is not going to be familiar with those standards and those clauses like the people that are dealing with it every single day. So you take that clause to them and you show them that this is what we need to meet. We're not meeting it. If we don't correct it ourselves, we're going to have to anyways when the inspector comes in and identifies it as a non-compliance, or the auditor comes in and identifies it as a non-conformance. But the more you can put, a dollar value to that, show them the time that it's taken for you to do things this way because you don't have the right things in place, the materials that it's going to cost, the easier it will be for you.
Okay, good. That's great. So I haven't seen any other questions come in. So are there any final thoughts that you ladies want to share before I kind of share some last minute? I'll pull up the PowerPoint slide just one more time with just a few things that we want to share with the group, but anything else before I get that up and running? Ready for that?
I think, if you don't know how to, if you're wondering how to properly do a root cause analysis, you need help, you need kind of one-on-one help, you can definitely reach out to us for sure. Shelly has training coming up. I think we're going to show that in a minute. Very hands-on, very interactive. Like you can bring your issues and kind of work through them in a live setting, which is fantastic. I mean, we have tons of resources on our website. We have do's and don'ts of managing inspection. We have a full fact sheet on how to do root cause. We have another one on risk assessments, just to walk you through it. And guides. I mean, you have one there with an example of a corrective action plan, you know, with how to fill them out if you've never done them before. And, you know, we have guides and everything else on. There's all those resources on our website for sure. And templates and whatever, if you don't know where to start.
And there's lots of free webinars out there as well that, you know, talks about non-conformances and root cause analysis. And you don't have to use the 5 whys. There's all kinds of different methods, techniques that you can use to get to the root cause. But again, it's practice, guys. The more corrective action plans you fill out, the easier it's going to be. It's like sports, right? The more you practice, the better you are. So at the end of the day, don't be afraid to do them. Don't be afraid to fail. We learn from our mistakes and we can only grow and get better, you know, when we practice. So reach out if you ever have any questions. Look at all the resources that are available online. Never feel that you should be doing this alone. Always bring your team in. Your HACCP team, your food safety team, colleagues that you've worked with, experience from other industries you may have worked with. Think of all of that when you sit down to do these corrective action plans.
Excellent, that's great. So I will just pull up the PowerPoint slides. We want to talk a little bit about, in addition to the amazing resources that we have available on our website, we have also some great quality and food safety services, and you mentioned the training. So let me just bear with me while I share my screen again and get this up. Excellent. So Elaine and Shelly, if you want to just kind of speak to some of the quality food safety services, we can go from there. Sounds okay?
Sure. We have, in addition to helping you through a non-conformance or, you know, being kind of a sounding board for, am I doing this right? We also do, you know, needs and gap and pre-audit assessments to help you identify or even support some issues you've been seeing. Sometimes it helps to have a third party or, you know, a consultant come in and kind of say, you know what, we're seeing the same thing too, and these are the repercussions. It makes it different for senior management to hear it from somebody different. And we do coaching and validation studies, reassessments, and development implementation if you're going into a new standard or trying to meet regulatory requirements. And internal auditing as well. So if those supports and the stuff that takes time, if you can't be impartial or you need another set of eyes, I mean, we're definitely a resource to contact.
And how could someone reach out to either of you or to the quality food safety teams? There a contact information that we can provide with the group?
Sure.
Or is there email?
Yeah, and we can send that out too after this, but it's foodsafety@perennia.ca, and all our contact information is on the website as well. And I think I definitely want to stress, you know, we've both been there, being in the industry as long as we have been, and you know, it's not fun to deal with a non-conformance. And sometimes if you've been there a long time, you get blinders on and you just really can't see a way out. But if somebody else you read off your issue to somebody and they say, oh, well, did you think about this? It might it might open your eyes and then just get you out of that rut. So, you know, please reach out.
Yeah, that fresh set of eyes, a different perspective.
Yeah, even a colleague or a friend you have from university that's in the same situation as you, working somewhere, if you can build that support network, it's really important.
Yeah, it can make a big difference just to have, like you said, a fresh set of eyes looking at a problem or an issue, opposed to someone who's been looking at it for a while now.
Yeah.
And we've got tons of training coming up. So if you want to speak to kind of some of the training sessions that we have for 2024, like there's always, the food safety team has always got lots of great training. So I think it's great to share that with the group today.
Yeah, and the one session that would really help with non-conformances is a lot of people, they do have, they struggle with identifying the root cause and doing a proper root cause analysis. So that training is coming up. It's virtual, which is great because you can do it in your home or in your office, wherever you want. And that's April the 9th, and then again, September 17th.
Excellent.
And registration is live. You can access this at www.perennia.ca and then just hover over quality and food safety learning. And you can see this list there.
Great, excellent. Okay, well, thank you both so much for your expertise and for answering everyone's questions. I found it to be very helpful, and hopefully everyone else did a value to them for attending today. As our co-managers mentioned, we will be following up with all of our participants just with some additional resources that were discussed today, as well as the best way to contact our quality and food safety team. And as they mentioned, we're here to help. So please don't hesitate to reach out if you have questions. You're looking for just, again, a second opinion. You just want to bounce some concerns off of them. We're here and available. So thanks to everyone for attending today, and hope you have a great rest of your afternoon. Okay, thank you so much.
Thanks, everybody.
everyone.